Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cat Bee Making Connections podcast show. I am so happy to share with you that I've got the lovely Catherine Prescott with me. Catherine, tell everybody about yourself. Tell everybody why you're here.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a joy and a dream to be on your podcast. Why am I here? Well, I think I'm here because Austin brought me here. And Austin is my son who's in spirit. He left the body on August 3rd, 2023. And within 8 weeks of his passing, I think I was put in touch with you. And then our whole journey into the continuation of consciousness really took off. Although, if I'm being honest, it really started many decades ago because for so long I've been a poet and I've been a yogi, a yoga practitioner. And those two threads have worn, they've kind of gone through my life in a braid ever since I can remember.
Amazing. And I know I was just telling a few people the other day, you're going to be at Mableton, and I've asked you if you'll do a poem titled The Gift for the Retreat. So I'm very excited. I'm not putting any pressure on you. I'm bigging you up big time.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it, Kat. I have no idea what's going to come up.
But that's the lovely thing about all these things, isn't it? We never know what life's going to throw at us, and we never know what's going to come up. And I think what I found when I met you is I don't necessarily remember our first reading, but I remember your lovely mane of hair, and I remember your smile, and I remember how sweet you were. I remember how you came to the reading very open-minded, a little bit skeptical as well, which I think is really healthy, and a little bit nervous. But how this wonderful journey took off for you, and you're now helping many, many other people as a result of your experience. And I think that's really beautiful as well. Share with us a little bit about Austin, though, and tell us about your book.
Start with Austin, and the book is for Austin. I'll show it. The book is Superbloom. It's a collection of poems. I don't know if you can see it. And it's dedicated to Austin. Austin, when he was in the body, he was my middle child. He was my easy one. He was fun. He was the kind of kid where if you were in a bad mood, you would take him outside to a party, to a bunch of people, and he would just vibe off the energy. He was always making people laugh. He thought life was funny. Everything was funny for him until it wasn't. Uh, and he was very smart. He was witty. He could make you laugh at yourself without hating yourself, without thinking any less of yourself. And that's really a gift. And, we always say this with kids who pass, but, it's true. Maybe we say it because it is true. He really always seemed like an old soul. And whatever we mean by that, right? An evolved soul, we can't put like ages on it. But when he was born, I remember he came out and he looked at me and we had a minute and I looked at him and I said, "Welcome back." He was that one. You could tell he had been here many times. He was thrilled to be back. And he just planted joy and fun wherever he went. And he was a healthy kid. He was my fruitarian. He ate mostly a fruit diet and like no carbs, like pretty much keto from the start. And he was scrawny and scrappy. He played soccer or football. And he was never the fastest, never the tallest, never the strongest, but he would always manage to get the ball and make the pass. He could always see the field. So he was my kid who I never worried about because I knew whatever life did to him, he would figure out a way because he had that, that positive mindset we always think about. It was intrinsic in him. He always thought the best could happen. And that's how he lived his life, in full joy and at full speed as well. And then when he was in his junior year, I think in the spring, he started getting on and off headaches. We didn't think too much of it. And I remember he came out of his room at one point and he's like, "Mom," he's like, I can't feel this in my face. And I was like, "Well, that's weird. You should be able to feel that in your face, but maybe it's a sinus infection because we don't know what we don't know." And we went through the summer and his symptoms kind of progressed. One day he's like, "I'm not driving anymore." I was like, okay, still thought nothing was really wrong with him. But I thought maybe something was wrong in the brain. That was the intuition that popped in. So now we can start talking about intuition too, right? And that whole journey. I've always been a poet. I've always been, I don't know, like not super connected, but open, open and closed, right? And when I was sat down to work, things would just come in and I'd write them down, but I never thought much of it. I was like, oh, this is the muse or whatever it is. And so I was writing with my writing group. And I wrote a sonnet, and at the end of it, I realized that whatever was in Austin was in his brain. And then I had that intuition again when we met with an ear, nose, and throat doctor who he kind of winced. And as soon as he winced, I almost heard Austin's voice say, "Mom, it's in the brain." And I was like, okay, but what does that mean, So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. A few weeks later, we realized he had a mass in his brainstem, and it was inoperable, and it was really one of the worst kinds of cancer, and almost nearly universally fatal is what it's considered. The kids, mostly it affects children. It's considered pediatric, although some adults are diagnosed with it, and that's what it is, and that's what it was, and it seemed like an impossible thing. How does this child get this cancer? It just there was no like math logic I could apply to it that made sense, any kind of sense. But by this point in my own life, I'm a poet, I'm a yogi, and I'd gone really deep into meditation in about 2018. Talk about a setup, right? Talk about a spiritual setup. Yeah, I went deep into meditation, deep into mantra. I was, waking up early at 4:30, just driven to sit, driven to chant, driven to go deeper. And I fell in love with consciousness studies through this. And then I started teaching yoga philosophy. So this is kind of where I am when Austin is diagnosed. I know the yogis say that consciousness continues. I teach now that consciousness continues, but I'd never had a reason to really test that theory. For me, it was like I went from like, okay, this is an interesting idea, and it really makes a lot of sense to me intrinsically, and I'm going with it. But I never needed to make that jump between like an intellectualization of a concept to the experience of it until Austin crossed. But Austin, he was, phenomenal. And then right when he was diagnosed, we saw what would most likely happen, but we held out hope anyway, because I always envisioned he would be cured or part of the cure. It was impossible to see him leaving the body completely.
What strikes me though is your optimism through it all and the way the meditation must have helped keep you sane, really, in the period where he's convalescing or going through this process of treatment and never knowing really if he's come out the other side of it or not in terms of the physical body and the physical world. But you discover that consciousness continues. You discover on a physical level. So you've got the theoretical level, you've got the meditation that's keeping you
Yeah.
calm and still. And now you've got the practical application of that. And here's Austin as the greatest teacher coming on in really strong from the other side, like, hell,
Mom, like, you know
Mom,
this.
what are you worried about? I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here, and you got this. And it was so crazy, Kat, because before he was even diagnosed, I was sitting one day and very early in the morning, and a voice came in. I don't have these experiences, and it says, "You haven't experienced sorrow yet, great," in a very even tone. "You haven't experienced great sorrow yet, are in the human form. Are you ready?" And
Oh
I
my
was
God.
like,
Before he transitioned, Catherine.
before he was diagnosed.
Whoa.
And I said, in my mind, it's like I had to answer. And I just said, yes. And then my logical mind stepped in. It's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Divorce, you'll figure it out. And I kind of left it there. And then throughout his illness, it was just peppered with these really interesting it seemed like coincidences at the time, like the day we met with the neurosurgeon. Before we knew exactly what kind of tumor he had, just that it was bad, that day, that very same day, his car was stolen off the street, which he couldn't drive anyway because he wasn't feeling well enough to drive. And at the time, it was like almost a Job moment, like, what's going on? But then in hindsight, I was like, oh, that was grace. That was spirit. He doesn't need this car anymore. Let me take it off your hands so you don't have to worry about it. And we'll get the insurance money. That part is fine. Don't worry about this. And then throughout it, I had signs from I guess from my guides or my grandmother. On the day of his biopsy, a huge rainbow went over our house. I cut into a watermelon. There was a huge heart at the bottom of it. So I felt this sense of being guided in this worst possible moment. So it was kind of like this setup from, 2018 really, and then all the way through his illness. We just have these little like coincidences, these little things. So by the time Austin was done, we went through clinical trial. We made up a clinical trial. We sent a friend to Germany to get expensive medicine. It's like we had energy healers, we had Reiki, we threw everything. Yeah, mom's weird meds. Like, I was giving him whatever herbs that someone said might do something, anything, because when allopathic medicine has no cure, you will do anything. And for your child, of course. And that's what we told him, we'll do absolutely anything. And we tried everything. So when he transitioned, he was, in the bed and getting ready to go, I told him, hey, in my mind, I didn't know about telepathy yet, but in my mind, I was like, I'm going to call you when you leave. And unlike in real life, I need you to pick up because even though he was an amazing kid, he was a teenager and he didn't always pick up the phone when I called. But this time I need you to pick up, no ifs, ands, or buts. So when he came through with that first reading, Kat, I was like, you picked up.
Oh,
Thank you.
oh my gosh. Well, I'm really chuffed that he did as well. He's a lovely child and he's a great communicator. And goosebumps because now when I yeah, I don't always have to have you in a reading for him to pop in either. Sometimes I'll be reading for someone else and I'll be like, you seem really familiar to me. Do I know you? Just like, hmm. And then you realize, there's a common thread. And
We have
here
met.
yeah, and so it's super, isn't it? The super highway of communication and connection. It's this amazing little myriad of connections, and it's fabulous. So I think that's wonderful. And he is a really strong child. He is a confident child. He does give good evidence and
Yeah.
clarification. And yeah, that never, we can only be proud of him. He's a very, very good
He's
kid.
so good, and when he was in the body, he was also a great communicator. He talked nonstop. He was one of those people who spoke their thoughts to understand them. I write to understand, but he was just the only he was only silent maybe 3 different times in his life. One was when we took him to SeaWorld. I don't know why we did, and the giant orcas splashed his knees and he stopped talking the whole time. And then after the big fish went and my knees got wet. It's like, oh my gosh, that was horrific. And then when he was diagnosed, he was silent for a while. Because how do you process that as a teenager? How do you process, your mortality?
Can I talk about some of the painful stuff, Catherine, for a moment? I'm very intrigued because I think it's really important for people that are listening. I'm very intrigued about the little bit
Yeah.
where he's having headaches and symptoms, but you write them off and then you find out a few months later it's impossible. So you must have had that moment where it's the should-ofs, the would-ofs, the could-ofs. I mean, how did you ride that roller coaster ride, Catherine? Because I think if it was me, I would be absolutely beside myself. And what I find with you is that this beauty that you
Yeah.
have and this power from spirit. You always seem very composed. Is it like that every day, or are you actually falling to bits behind the scenes? Like
Well,
I'm just curious.
tell us really.
I'm a
Yeah,
great
I mean,
reader for other people, but I also want to understand. Is it like that?
yeah.
Do you have the bad days?
Well, of course, I have the bad days. And when Austin was diagnosed, I did not go down easily. Are you kidding? What you see now is a product of really having been, you know, pushed through the hottest fire. I remember going up to the rooftop of the place that we rented and it just, fist at God, like, what are you doing? You've got the wrong guy. I was so mad. I was angry, deeply, deeply angry.
And
Well,
I have to presume that is
mhm.
normal. It's normal. It must
I,
be.
I I was like, not this one, not this one. Come on, he loves life. He loves being here. He's just amazing. Like you definitely got the wrong guy, and it doesn't make sense. So at the beginning, I was insanely angry, but then I think what happened to me happens to a lot of moms, where I was like, I have to take care of this kid, and that need superseded any of my own anger and sadness. Now, mind you, I did cry every day when he was diagnosed. Every day at some point, I would start crying. And that went for about 2 weeks after he crossed. And then I almost heard him say, okay, that's good. Like that's enough. So yeah, of course. No, when he was sick for those 11 months, it was horrifically trying. Yeah, because how do you care for someone, try to find a cure where there is none, and prepare them to leave the body at the same time? And we were
Yeah.
doing those things simultaneously.
When your vision for a really beautiful future.
Of course, yeah, and he wanted to fight. So that's what we did. So one of the after my anger, still in sadness, I kind of sent out an APB to my family and I said, "Listen, we are going to be hopeful for Austin. We're going to be loving and we're not going to give him our sadness. We're just not going to give it to him. And this is our gift for him." And
Amazing.
who knows where that came from, right? I mean, I don't give myself credit. I think there's this other kind of force working through all of us. But I
Really
was
interesting in the
so
context.
open.
Yeah, I find that interesting in the context as well that the retreat spirit gave us the name the gift, and you're talking about the
Uh-huh.
gift of not giving sorrow, giving love, and being
Yeah.
strong enough and brave enough to keep that separate from the situation. That's a beautiful gift, friend. It's a
Yeah,
powerful.
I felt there was no other way. I couldn't crumble. Who's gonna take care of him? He needed so much help, so much aid. So luckily my husband and I were a united front on that. And it wasn't easy because, I felt like, okay, you see this person who's like standing up, but inside I felt like I was coming off the battlefield every day, just like
Tired.
scarred and bruised and broken and everything just messed up. But, here we are. Let's get
Wow.
through, And also I think what happens in those moments is you move from like a future vision to this, like, I kept calling it the radical present because that was, and the yogis say, the only moment is now, right? This is the only time, right? Right, right. Be here now, right? All we have is now. And so we had to live in the now. We had nothing else.
Yeah, because the suffering is in the past or the future. It's not in the
Yeah.
present. You can manage the present in that moment. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible, Catherine. I think you're so brave. I know it was forced upon you, and I know you would change it tomorrow if you could. You would bring him
Yeah.
back day if there was a magic wand that would allow you to that moment. But in this holding of space of that young man, the love that you
Mm.
placed around him, the support and the strength to tell everybody else and be a leader and direct them and tell them how it's going to be. How was the reaction of the family? How did they get behind you in terms of support? Or did they find some of the sort of ideology a bit strange?
Well, I've been a bit strange for a while, so they were used to that. I was always a bit of a black sheep, so I was out of the pen. But they were looking to me to tell them how to do it because we had never we've been through some hard things, but nothing this hard. So they were actually pretty phenomenal. And then when we told our extended group of friends, they were pretty good about it as well. Very respectful. We were lucky. We were very fortunate. And at some point, a friend kind of nudged me and said, "Hey, you should do a caring bridge." And I was like, "A blog for people with really sick children, or family members who are dying? I don't want to do that." And then I was like, "No, you really need to do that because people want to know."
Tell everybody what a caring bridge is.
Oh, so Caring Bridge, it's like a blog site where people can visit and you leave, blog entries as to, how your person is. So it's a place to update people and it's centralized and it can be private too. So you're not on social media if you don't want to go that wide. You just want to stay within your community. So that's what we did. We set up a page and this way everyone who cared about Austin and us, they got updates, as his condition changed and weekly and then less than weekly. But at that point, I was like, okay, it's good to have this energy around him, that support. I don't know what it does, but I know, or how it works, but I know it does something. And I really think it helped to buoy us and him, in that time. And we don't,
Wonderfully seeing the power of prayer and thought and ideas as
yeah.
well as keeping everybody updated. Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful. Do you get to keep those entries as well? Do you ever look back at them, Kath?
You know what? I have looked back at them a little bit. Yeah, you get to keep them, I think, until they decide that you're done. But yeah, I started a nonfiction book about our journey, and it's not done yet. But I've gone back to the website just to dip back into that time. As I always say, the hardest thing was that journey with Austin. The best thing about that journey was Austin because the whole entire time he was upbeat. He was making jokes even when he couldn't walk. He still found the joy in life and still had deep compassion for others who were suffering. One of the last, with this disease, you lose your ability to walk and to talk, to swallow. Every involuntary activity that the body does starts to shut down because it's all in that command center, in that control center. So as he was losing his abilities, he was still finding compassion. He told us and his doctor apologized to him that he had this diagnosis because nobody deserves it. And Austin's response was, "Yes, thank you. But I think about the kids who are younger than me who have it." So, he
My
was
God.
just remarkable through the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow.
And I know he had his moments, but he was so strong in character and open to what might come next.
Wow. Did you ever discuss before he transitioned the afterlife or the idea of consciousness continuing and set that up before he actually moved so that it was less of a heartache? There was more of an awareness that the connection of love can never be broken, especially between a
Yeah.
parent and child.
And I wish I had those exact words when we did speak, but he did in the beginning, after his diagnosis. We were sitting in our living room and I was working or trying to, I don't know what I was doing on my computer. And he looked at me and he goes, okay. He like tapped the bridge of his nose. He's like, so what do we believe again? I was raised,
Yeah.
he was raised agnostic. So I was like, okay, some people believe this, some people believe that. And here's what I teach. You want to know what I teach? So he had a crash course in yoga philosophy during the
Huh?
course of his illness. And I would just weave in different teachings and different concepts and about the continuation of consciousness and what the yogi said, and, that death is really a birth and birth is really a death. And what if we do go on? What if that part of us continues? And you can call it consciousness, pure conscious awareness. You can call it spirit. You can call it soul. You can call it, Purusha or Atman, as it's referred to in some of the yogic literature. But this is what has been, repeated for millennia. So when it came down to it, I was like, this is what I think happens. But we'll find out.
We're going to find out and we're going to validate it. You feel you've done on the validation front, Catherine?
Oh, it's been
Looking
phenomenal.
back it out, do you feel like, wow, it's aligned?
I mean, it's beyond anything I could have envisioned from our first visit through you, through all the signs that he continues to send every few days. So my book arrived this past week. Oh, sorry, my days always get confused. Sunday, maybe Sunday. On the day, I'll put it this way, on the day my book arrived, I was doing the Wordle. And the funny thing is, I thought it had arrived the day before. There was a box and I hadn't opened it. So I'm sitting there doing the Wordle, and I sit in my hammock. I have some things that I need to do to help reset my nervous system, and that's one. And I was doing the Wordle, which is a word puzzle in the New York Times, and it's a 5 letter word every day. And the word of the day was bloom. And then my husband came in with the box, and in this new box was the book Superbloom. And that's
Wow.
just, I know, on the same day. So Austin sends signs and he comes in so often that it's irrefutable, to the point where even my husband, who was a bit of an atheist before Austin transition, is now like, "Ooh, that's a sign. I got one today."
It's contagious. I love that. I love your sense. I have such a strong connection with yogis in India. I used to travel there a lot with work. And I know that when we meet as strangers, we never know these connections. And I just, from working out there, I was very highly influenced by people that were in the spiritual field. In fact, I don't know if I would have classed myself as truly spiritual until I started traveling to India. I remember
Mm,
I've always wanted to go, but I had no inclination to book it. There were other places that I wanted to go first. And
right.
then I was gifted this opportunity with work to go to India. And I remember the day that the flight went to land, and I suddenly felt like I'm home. I'd
Mm,
never been there before, but from the minute that I arrived in India, I thought, I'm home. And I had this really strong sense or feeling of connection.
mm,
And it was really through that journey through India that I met some really spiritual people who were connected to yogis in the mountains and who started educating me, first of all, with books. I didn't really know why. I didn't know. I just thought they did this for everybody. It was just, it was super, super, welcoming and lovely. And I'm sure that they did for one or two people, but there was one particular
mm,
lady who took a very keen interest and really, really educated me. So, and at this point, I didn't know how my life was going to change or in what direction it was going to go. A little bit like your journey, Catherine. I know yours
mm,
is more extreme. I had a diving accident. I had, through that trauma, my awareness of spirit opened up. I think I'd always been intuitive like you. I think I'd always had a strong
mm,
intuition. I'd had some really strange things happen to me, but I've written
right.
them off as coincidence or just weird. That's just weird things happen to
Doesn't
me.
it happen to everyone?
I call it weird shit happens to you. Weird shit happens. In fact, that's the name of a book if ever there was one.
That's great.
I honestly, I didn't, and I've met so many people I find when, it's a bit like energy that resonates, isn't it? Certain people resonate towards you or you resonate towards people because you feel that there's a common connection. You don't even know there's a common connection at the stage that you meet. You don't realize that you're guided into position to a certain degree. And then you sit in front of somebody and you have these amazing experiences. And then when you meet their friends and family, you also see the line of connection across those pathways. And I do
Mm,
feel like it's a real blessing actually, your background in the yogi sort of traditions and philosophy and all that knowledge. And I think, I see the preparation in everything that you're saying. Some people talk about soul plans, but look at the guidance you were given with the voice saying, you haven't experienced sorrow yet. Are you ready? Asking your permission, never pushing something on you, making the suggestion. We think in our life, nobody would ever navigate to have this experience. I lost my father-in-law to cancer a couple of years
Mm.
ago. It was an
Oh, I'm
experience
sorry.
itself. And several family members on my husband's side have had cancer connections, and it's powerful. It's a real challenge. And, certain things happen to those people, and you lose them before you actually, as a result, when it goes to the brain, or when there are side effects that affect the brain, you lose that person before you physically lose them. And that can be extremely hard because the grieving period is extended, and you're learning all this new language, medical language that you've never experienced before, trying to gain as much information as you can in order to, and ours was a bit of a roller coaster. We went from
Mm.
cancer, we went from COVID to cancer to
Oh,
dementia,
goodness.
back to cancer again. And all the time during a life experience where we were having a house rebuilt and
Yeah.
renovated and everything was going wrong. And we had normal human life stresses. So, and it's the same for everyone, aren't you? Sometimes you're juggling 100 things and going at 100 miles an hour. And it was so hard because we wanted to spend more time, but because of the problems at the house, we had to be, it was almost like life was keeping us grounded in a certain way. And
Yeah.
that was really, really hard. So I don't know that I had the should have, could haves, would haves, but I certainly felt like it was a very hard experience to go through when you are wanting to be one place and you have to be
Uh-huh.
another. And when you see how your loved ones grieve as well, my husband was extremely close to his father. And he was to me a really big character
Mm.
in my life, Catherine. He was somebody who filled up the room. You talk about Superbloom. You walk into a room and he would fill it with his energy.
I
Everybody
love that.
adored him. He was a lovely person with a big personality and great fun to be with. I sort of look back and I think, gosh, I'm really glad I was a bit of a different child in a way because we went on holiday with them every year, Catherine, and
Mm.
we spent a lot of time as a family together. And now having, on the hindsight, having the diagnosis and since his transition around similar time to
Yeah.
Austin, I really
Okay.
do feel that it's a blessing in a way that we've got these lovely memories that I can look back on. And I think
Mhm.
about those times when we spent time together in happier times, and that gives me joy. I love the memories and the photos. How do you memorialize him? How do you look back? I know you've written this beautiful book and you're writing your memoirs, but do you look back at the photos and the memories and you think of those happy times? How do you keep them alive? And did
Yeah.
you videos?
Yeah, I mean, these are such great questions, and I'm sorry for the physical loss of your father-in-law. Yeah.
Oh, thank
It's devastating to watch someone go through disease. And yet, I've often thought, well, how lucky that I had that time with him, to kind of prepare the runway. So much overlap there, Kat, and then I'll talk about how we memorialized Austin. One of the overlap is when Austin was diagnosed, we were between houses. We had sold our house, and then we were under contract to buy another house. And it was one of these terrible Miami developer stories where the guy was actually corrupt and taking advantage of people, multiple offers on multiple townhomes, and we ended up canceling the deal and getting our money back, but nowhere to live, right? So we
you.
rented for a year, and then we were finally found another place, and it was in that time in between that Austin was diagnosed. So it's not
Wow.
enough that we moved like 3 times and we were so unmoored as it was, and then the diagnosis came in. Yeah, life, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I know one day it'll make perfect sense. And so the journey through Superbloom is a lot through that. What is home? Who is home? Where is, how is home constructed? And then Austin and his fight and how he got through and how we got through, and then his transition to spirit. So it covers, grief to and loss of physical connection to this expanded state and the spiritual connection. And
That's
then,
such an important phrase that you've hit on, Catherine, the loss of physical connection. Because some people don't like to use the word loss or death or those kind of things. They prefer the word transition, which I think is a beautiful word. But there is a loss of the physical and
uh,
it is
very much so. Yeah, and we don't
tangible.
want to bypass it. We don't want to we're in the yoga community. We're very
I
Yeah, we
I
don't.
remember at the beginning of my journey, I was like, "What's spiritual bypassing?"
Right.
The idea that you leap over it and you forget about the
Yeah,
whole
you leap right, which I think is really important for people to know. I cried every day. I was angry. I was, enraged. It wasn't like this state now. I really had to travel through some really difficult emotions and feel it all and heal it all is kind of where I'm at. Feel it all and heal it all. And of course, it still comes up. We're in Vermont right now. So when Austin crossed, transitioned to spirit, left the body, died, whatever you want to use, we had his body cremated. And because as soon as he left, I was like, he's gone. And the doctors are like, wait, what? I was like, no, take his brain, like do some good research with it. He's no longer here. They're like, do you want to stay with the body? I was like, no, he's gone. So for us, Austin wasn't very attached to physical things, and neither were we. So we had him cremated, and then we turned him into a tree, which we planted in Vermont, where we are right now. So we try to come up here as often as we can, and it's at our family's camp. So our family congregates up here, throughout the warmer months, let's say. So he rests there, and he's part of the party still. And
I
then
love this part of the community. I love that.
yeah, so he's not, somewhere where no one will visit, but he's in the kind of this central place for our family, and his friends are starting to make pilgrimages up here. And it's a place he loved, where he loved to be. And then, when we knew we had to do something. Funeral didn't sound right. We wanted to do some kind of celebration. The thing was, the kid loved to party. He loved bringing people together. He was the ringleader for his friend group. All throughout his illness, his friends would come over and we'd have pizza night, and we still have pizza night. So we wanted to throw him a big party, but I needed a little bit of time. So as he was, just after he transitioned, I remember his doctor looked at me and said, let us know when you do something for him. And I looked at him and I said, it's going to be on the winter solstice. We'll do something on the beach. We'll let you know. And he's like, how do you know? I was like, I don't know how I know anything right now. I'm so tired. But I think when you're that tired, you're also that blown open. And they're very kind of mystical things that happened around Austin's passing. So we knew we'd wanted to do that. So we created a ceremony. I didn't know, I didn't have quite the infrastructure, right? I'm not Catholic. I don't belong to any religion, not even really Hindu. I'm like a fake Hindu half the time. So I'm like, what do we do? But Austin grew up on Miami Beach, and the beach was always a special gathering place for us and for our friends. So with my friend Allegra, we created a ceremony where we made a mandala out of flowers on the beach. And then we filled up jars, well, 18 jars, sorry, with water. And then we had people write messages on Post-its and then put them on the jars. So,
Oh, mm.
and then also leave like little shells and things and dried flowers around the mandala and meditate and think on Austin. And then we had a moment of silence. So the jars are like the container, the body that we're in, and the water is the spirit that comes into the body. And then the notes were like the energies or the way we affect one another when we're embodied. And then after the ceremony, we poured the water back into the ocean, back into source, and his good friends took jars home, and that's what we did. We created this ceremony to honor him. And we flew a giant kite that's become an octopus, which is one of our main sign. And then we had a big pizza party, at a hotel. And of
Amazing.
course, it was people coming together, and it was joyful for the reunion that these hard events bring about. It was as beautiful as it could be in the moment. And that's how we honored him. And that's what I wanted to do. I want him to go out with a big party.
Oh,
Like send off, like, oh, we'll see you soon. We'll see you one day. And that's one thing we told Austin. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, when Austin was at the very end, when he told us he was tired and done, we understood. He had been fighting so hard and he had nothing to fight with, right? It just wasn't fair for him to stay in that state any longer. And we looked at him and I was like, listen, we're all going to die. We're all going wherever you're going now. You're just going a little bit sooner than we would have liked. Because I think one of the things is when you're sick with an illness that's going to take your life, especially when you're young, you feel very alone.
that your other people that you love are not gonna see them again. And so actually to know that you'll be reconnected on the other side is quite beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, save my seat.
Yep,
I'll be there.
absolutely. I wanna be on that plane.
That's yeah.
I'll run. Yeah, that's heartfelt, Catherine. It's really heartfelt. The mystical things that happened around his transition, tell me
Hmm.
about a few of those.
Okay, so We had about a week with Austin in the bed, transitioning. And in the beginning, it was just kind of, we're figuring out what was going on. Then toward the end, everyone started to come visit, and we knew he was on his in his last hours. We had a few things happen. One was his sister was up in Vermont and trying to get back in time to see him. And he seemed almost ready to go. And I said, just hold on 2 more days so that your sister can come. And he did. At that same time, an energy worker was working on him remotely. And he said he got a message to help him transition. And then he got another message to help him stay. And he's like, what are we going for? A miracle? What's happening? And then on transition day, he got a message to help him transition, not knowing what was going on with us in the hospital. So that was
Wow.
really interesting. And then at one point I keep calling it the break room, but it was like the family room where my friends who are really from my yoga community, my yoga moms, they came in. They came in like a swarm of bees with like tea kettles and coffee pots and snacks, and they just outfitted the room with everything. And it was summer, and they had all been in different parts of the states. One was in Colorado, one was in Wisconsin, one was up here in New England, one was in New York, and all of them received a visitation from a hummingbird as they were deciding whether or not to fly back. Because, Austin had been hospitalized many times, and it's like, is it the end? Well, it was finally the end. And they put it together when they were in the family room. Like, oh, I saw a hummingbird. One came and flew right in front of my best friend's face as she was deciding to fly, whether or not she should fly home. And then they all decided to fly home. So that was a one. And then at one point, I was in this family room, we were talking, and I don't think I've really shared this very much, but it'll be in the memoir. This like little porthole opened, and I could see in my mind's eye, and I could see him on the other side getting a new body. I don't know what to call it, but I saw him in a new healthy body, and I saw him laughing. I hadn't seen that child smile in months because your face is paralyzed. You literally cannot smile toward the end. And this kid who was nothing but a giant smile his whole life couldn't smile, and I saw him smiling, and I was like, oh, he's good. I was like, he's going now. He's transitioning.
That's so cute. Yeah, I never considered that, than putting on a new life body. I've always thought it was we let go of the shell and we don't put anything else on, but it makes so sense to me, Catherine. That
Does
makes such
it?
it does, it does. Why wouldn't you not step into a light body, your astral form of what you want to look like, the way that you wanna look? Of course you would. Of course you would. It would
That
explain
was
things.
exactly it. And I was like, is this, a mom like losing her mind? Or is this a mom opening up? Or is it both? I
Mm.
wasn't sure what to make of it.
A bit of both, but I think as well is a question that many people will ask me actually is what do they look like now on the other side, or how it's very hard for a medium because they'll show themselves or present themselves in a way that is familiar to the person in front of you. So it's very rare that they'll give you certain insights in
Hmm.
readings as to what the variances are. But I guess until we get there, we probably don't understand the intricacies of what it's really like, or we have to remember from our
Right.
previous experiences or incarnations what that experience is. But yeah, there's definitely insights. I definitely understand quite a few when they talk to me about there's a broader spectrum of color. That makes sense to me because
Mm.
bees see colors that we don't see. And so that's in the atmosphere. And it makes sense that the sounds are different because cats and mice hear different sounds that we don't hear. So, in a way, the
Right.
human body is the filter. It's filtering out this information that is available already in the consciousness. And so, in their world, without the physical body, they don't have that filter. Of
Right.
course, they're going to see and hear more, and they're going to need the light body suit that is going to be able to filter that vibration or manage it in whatever way that they desire in terms of soul. So yeah, that's a really beautiful question, Catherine. A lot of the times as well, they'll come down sharing interests or common themes that are inherent either on a soul level or on a physical level as
Mm.
well to discuss the things that they see you continuing doing that they loved or have had tastes that they've liked or loathed. I've even had
Uh-huh.
amazing readings where they show how well connected. There was I don't know if I told this on another podcast, but there's a lady in Canada, Catherine, and I remember in the middle of the reading, I just had to say, stop, you need to go downstairs. I've just got this ridiculously rancid smell. An animal's got trapped or died under your
Oh.
porch. You're like, can you go down now? and call me back. It's all right. I'll reschedule, but just go down because I'm worried because your grandma in spirit is saying it's urgent. So
Oh
I
my
gotta stop."
goodness.
And she didn't know, and she had been apparently living like that for quite a few days, and had it not come up in the reading, it probably would have infiltrated the house or whatever, and she was able to go downstairs, clear it. She said, "Call me back in an hour." And then we continued, and we were both stunned. We were both stunned, and I was like, "Gosh, they're aware of everything. They're aware, that poor raccoon." I was like, "That poor, like, situation." I was like, "That's unbelievable, isn't it?" It's like it's happening in real
Yeah.
time. They're here present. They know what we're experiencing. They see it, they feel it, they know it, and they were able to warn us. Like, wow, like,
It's
and
incredible.
it is,
You
there's
know,
so many little miracles like that, and you realize they have to be right here. They have to be. How can that happen?
how can that happen? How can that happen? And then, Kat, the beauty is it gives you something else to hold on to, because if you just have the pain, the sadness, the physical loss, I just feel like that's just a quicksand pit you can fall into. But to have this other thing, like, well, they're right here, not the form you want. It's still hard. There is this other thing, and it's undeniable. It's undeniable. I don't know how many signs you need before you kind of get the message, but we're a bit dense,
Yeah.
and I'm a bit dense too. I put myself in that group.
But I think it's once you see the amount, I mean, even just going through the podcast, the amount of people that are having their experience, and to be able to say to people these things that I used to think I was weird. I'm actually quite normal in comparison. Like, literally, like, some crazy amazing things happen to people. I was talking to Nan and Jeff about their sun apparitioning in the tree and them catching it on video. It's just the most
Oh,
amazing thing
how
I've ever seen.
incredible.
It's
How
so amazing,
amazing.
so amazing, and then to be able
Mhm.
to overlay the photo to show how clear it is as well. I mean, it's just the
I
things that happen, you
The
just
things
can't
that
make.
happen, and they happen, okay, there's the voice in your head, right? That's one way it happens. But then there are, like you said, like the physical things that happen. And just the other day, Austin's friends were coming over. And I said to Austin, my meditation that morning, I was like, can you just do something with the lights and sound? Like maybe make the Sonos go on, like turn off the light, just one or two things would be great. Then his friends are over. Wouldn't you know it? As soon as they walk in, one of the kitchen lights on, off, on, off, on,
Yeah.
off. And then the freezer starts like almost singing, making this really weird noise. And to the point where his friends were like, wait, what's going on with the freezer? Can I just, and they started opening, like young men are. They're so cute. They're opening up the freezer, looking in, moving things around. Nothing would turn off this noise. As soon as the kids left, the light stopped and the noise stopped. And I
Wow.
was like,
That's like Suzanne last week. She said to me, I would ask Brittany, turn the light on, and she'd turn the light on. Nobody would get up, nobody would touch the switch,
right,
it'd just come on. And she'd go, turn the light off, and it'd turn off. And then she'd bring her husband in to witness it,
yeah,
who was a complete skeptic, non-believer.
right.
Turn the light on, turn the light off, and it would happen on demand, Catherine. I mean, you just can't do those kind of things. And I know because she wrote a book called The Scent of Roses. And I know
Mm.
I was in my office one day and the whole room, not knowing that
Oh,
that was her sign, filled up with the smell of the most powerfully beautiful smell of roses. And I said, gosh, I'm overwhelmed. Like,
right,
wow,
it's like
like,
a lot of rows.
I'm so sorry. Something's interfering with your reading. Like, the whole room's gone to the scent of roses, and it's so powerful. Oh gosh, I wish you could smell this. And she started to laugh, and I said, I think this is your daughter bringing in
Yeah.
roses, but she must be coming in with a higher spirit world. I was like, it is the most powerful
Oh,
scent. And she was like, she's been doing that to me since the day that she
stop it.
transitioned. No,
Amazing.
it was amazing, and she did it to me once in a train, and there was nobody in the train, Catherine, and the
Mm.
whole of the carriage filled with the smell of roses, and I was like, "Brittany's here." So I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
You could call it craziness, couldn't you? You think you were going out of your mind. You think you're a parent who
Mhm.
just has formed that attachment
Sure.
and wants that
Mhm.
wants that continuation, and then somebody witnesses your
Mhm.
crazy world that you
Yeah.
are
I know.
experiencing, and you realize it's got to be true. And I sometimes think that that's a little bit of my role as a medium, is actually to
Mm.
validate the things that seem crazy, but are actually really normal and
But
part of
actually really
nature.
normal. Yeah, and I think in maybe 100 years, 200 years, okay, the science will meet, experience, and then we'll have that kind of justification, that logical justification that we feel that we need, especially in the
I
West.
don't know if I ever want that. I like the old magic.
The
I
old
like
magic.
I like those moments of like, I mean, I get jumped off my
Yeah.
seat when I'm like, people think I'm funny because I'm like, it's amazing to me as well. I love the awe and the wonder of spirit.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's the
for
beauty,
real. Like,
and you
it's
talked
just
about
amazing.
healing, right? How we heal in groups and how we help each other. I've been an AL leader for HPH now. And I think bringing parents together and validating, like you said, their experiences. I haven't met
Yes.
one parent who hasn't had an experience that
Yeah,
was
it's
like,
really
oh,
powerful. I don't think I have as well. Sometimes people will
mhm,
come to me and say, I'm not getting signs. And you have to help them or coach them to show them how
yeah,
to change the vibration or what to look out for. And I think
yeah,
once you're
exactly.
educated, I mean, I went 11 years when my granddad died, having told him to send me a sign, not getting any,
Mm,
thinking there was no continuation. And then suddenly one day, boom, 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 boom. And there was no denying it, Catherine. And I was like, he's here. Gosh, he's taken his time, but he's here. I think it's one of those things where you've got to say, well, I'm glad he didn't forget about me.
right,
It did
right.
take time, and I've experienced the frustration of that as everybody else has at times, So, but it's really interesting. I had an amazing one today, actually. One of my friends in spirit, he
Hmm.
sends me, I wait, yeah, I will say the band actually. He sends me Queen signs,
Oh,
and
fine.
as in the band, the rock and roll
Yeah, yeah,
band.
yeah.
And so today, Daisy posted a post about
Hmm.
Bohemian Rhapsody, and I was chuckling to myself, going, it was the
Hmm.
only thing I saw when I went to log on to social media. And I think, now with the new algorithms, you hardly see anything, do you, these days? And
Yeah, yeah.
for the chances of it being her post that I saw, I mean, it was just crazy, Catherine, because I don't really fall through social. I just go to post mine, and I might catch the one that's underneath it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
of course. Yeah, I'm the
And
same way
so
on social.
and
Yeah.
so and so her post was on, and then it was just a few minutes later after she was talking about reading for somebody, and it was like Queen, and then suddenly, um, a client of mine actually contacted me to talk about the reading that I did for her on Valentine's Day about
Mm.
ABBA. I thought, "That's really weird."
Mhm.
They're both connections from the funeral, actually, of a really close friend and my father-in-law in spirit, and I was like, "Hang on a minute, Queen and ABBA." And I was like, "I
Got
get
it.
what's going on there." Like, "Daisy, Daisy, I'm gonna call, we've got a sign check. We got a sign
Sign check.
we're being punked, we're being punked. Pay
Oh my gosh.
attention, I know what's coming next." And so we have these moments,
Oh,
and
it's
sometimes
hilarious.
realize them always in real time. It's only a few minutes later that I get the bell going ding, ding, ding,
Of
ding, ding.
course. Well, the brain is really the most dense thing, right?
Yes, it is. It
The
is.
brain is the veil. It takes the brain the longest time to catch up to what intuition and spirit has shown you and whatnot.
It doesn't matter how intuitive you are
Yeah.
or how tuned in you are. You're still human. You still have very human moments, and so I giggle, and I felt when my father-in-law passed, actually, Catherine. I find it interesting that you had such a great connection with
Mm,
Austin straight away. Actually, Daisy was the person that brought my
mm,
father-in-law through, and I was
uh,
at this point thinking he's not come through, and I was really
mm,
mortified by the whole thing, Catherine.
right.
It took maybe about a year for me to really get a significant sign. I was really upset, actually. I thought I was going to hear from him instantly. I did
Mm,
get, actually, that's a lie. I did get a moment with my husband where I was like, he's here.
okay, good.
But it was about a year down the line. I was sat having lunch. Daisy didn't even know. I hadn't told her that I'd lost my father-in-law. I was
Mm,
very private about it, didn't really talk that much. There's only a handful of people that were aware. And suddenly he comes through at the dinner table, and I was like, "Oh, Daisy, that's lovely. It's lovely because at least now I know he's there and I can sense him." And so there's a thread through certain things. It's lovely. So
yeah, and to have that connection again, it has so much healing power in it.
yeah,
To
it
feel like
does.
you've visited with them, to feel like you've connected with their energy again.
We went back to a
Yeah.
location. One of the things that I really recall about my father-in-law was actually my wedding, and he was so excited, Catherine, and it was such a big party and so fun. The run-up was even better than the wedding. The wedding was good, but the run-up and
Mm,
the aftermath was amazing. We had such a giggle, and I just don't. I'll never forget him in his kilt and his excitement, and everything he wanted to do. He was just a cool guy. I remember we went back, my husband and I went back on our wedding anniversary. It was a significant milestone
Mm,
anniversary. And I said, "You know what? We haven't ever been back. It would be really nice to go back." And I said, "I can actually see him in his kilt. I can actually feel his presence in the room. Can you feel him? He's here." And it was just one of those moments where I thought of all the places, of course you were going to show up here. Of course. And
and
there
did your
was a
husband feel it? Did he?
yeah, he got a sense. He felt that feeling of I don't know if he felt it through me or whether he actually physically felt it in the room. But yeah, there have been some really amazing signs and blessings, and he has noticed them. And I think it's really interesting because he's a very grounded individual and
Mhm.
really doesn't get involved in many of my spiritual little sort of escapades. He's there to ground me, I think,
I
Catherine.
can
That's what
relate, I can relate.
I mean, but over the period of time, I think at the beginning he was very scared, you see. He was like,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, like what is happening to my wife? This is not who I married." Spirit waited till we got married before they opened that. As soon as we got married, they opened it, and it was kind of like poor guy had went on this
Uh-huh.
roller coaster ride of experiences. But do you know what? He's realised that it's brought us closer together, and it's made
Mhm.
us happier in many ways, and it's made me happier. I feel a more rounded, happier person now than I was before. I was in the rat race running 100 miles an hour. It's not that I left the rat race straight away. I was an executive in the fashion world. And so I had many experiences that were kind of very high, fast paced industry with a lot of changes to cope with and a lot of movement. And you were always on the edge of your seat,
Mhm.
like dealing with the latest thing. And so it was kind of wonderful really when spirit came, life became a bit easier. It slowed down, but it speeded up at the same time. Spirit taught me shortcuts or things that I could do differently or would share certain things with me that would help me endlessly in my work life, in my normal corporate life, not just the guidance between, you get
Yeah.
that commentary from spirit about have you experienced sorrow? I got the one, are you prepared to leave your job? Are you prepared to
Ah,
take that leap? Are you gonna walk away from this career of 21 years and just do what we
mhm.
ask you to do? And I remember thinking, a little bit,
Well,
when you're ready, another time. There's
yeah, in a
plenty of
little
time.
bit.
We've
Yeah.
got eternity. We've got eternity. And then, they're like, well, we'd love you to go of your own accord, but if you don't want to go of your own accord, we're going to have to do a bit of pushing because we've got to get to certain places at certain time. And then, of course,
Are you ready? It didn't feel like a question I could say no to. Like it was happening. It was almost a rhetorical question.
yeah,
It's
I felt
almost
that.
like it's almost like we're just
I like to think I was asked. I agree. I don't know that I had a choice because what happened when I did stay put really made me realize you better go fast. But I it's interesting, isn't it? It is a rhetorical question, but at the same time, I'm glad it was asked. I liked
yeah.
there was something beautiful about the permission being given.
Well,
Are
it's
you
the
ready?
free will almost, right? It's almost
Yeah,
like the free will, like you're
I
so
always ask.
close.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
wonder if free will is actually the way that we manage it with our
Mm.
emotions, the way that we greet it or we let go of it, as opposed to the free will. I think maybe the pathway or the map
Yeah,
is already in place.
exactly. I
But
think the same thing. It's not so
yeah,
deterministic as it is how are you going to travel through this hard thing?
yeah,
That's where
how are
you
you
get to make a choice. You don't I'm firmly of the belief, listen, when Austin was diagnosed, there was nothing that would have led me to believe that he could have had the diagnosis. So I was fully aware that so much was out of our control by that point. But how you navigate life, that's exactly where you have control. And that might be the only place where you exert that free will. And you say, no, we're going to do it
you
this way. I could fall to the ground and you know, end up in a heap of quicksand and do that. And some people would blame me for that. But we're going to go this way. We're going to try it this way. And that's how we're going to get through. I think you're 100%. That's the message I've gotten over and over again. And that's,
yeah.
what
I've
I
even
teach.
had physical, Catherine. I had an experience where 5
Mm.
people experienced the same thing and not one person saw the same thing or had the same
Hmm.
experience because of their different levels of consciousness or awareness, conscious awareness. So I'm a
That's
medium.
amazing.
I sense young boys just entered the room and I was like, so I said to his parents, "Oh, your son's just interacting with my
Yeah.
daughter. He's going to do something in a minute. He's going to express himself. He's going to do a catchphrase through signs, through my daughter. She's going to be completely oblivious. But he's going to
Amazing.
do something that I don't know about, that only you know about, to confirm that he's here. Watch this. And then they like, my daughter went, "Oh, look at my guns. Look at my guns." Oh, like this. And she was so feminine and so young and so girly. I thought,
That's
I have
it.
never, like, no way. The two parents sit down and they're like, "Oh my gosh, did we just witness that?" And my
Mm.
husband's like, "What are you talking about? Where is he?" No, she must have picked that up from somewhere, from TV, or kind of seen somebody do it. And I was like, "Okay, it's very interesting, isn't it? There's 5 of us here." I was
Yeah.
consciously aware he was here. I then told his parents that they become consciously aware. My husband and my daughter completely oblivious. In fact, Ava just thought she was the center
That's
of attention.
amazing.
It was funny as, and I just was like, "What's the difference? Why?" And I suppose in life, we experience things different and we see things from different angles. It's like,
Mhm.
somebody might witness an incident and 5 different people see things because of the position that they were in and the
Mhm.
location that they were in. But at the same time, we do go through life having these incredibly astoundingly different experiences, and we can be right in the same location from the same angle
And the same thing. Yeah.
because of the way that we perceive something, or the way that we, that positive mindset that you were talking about. If you've got a positive
Mhm.
mindset and something challenges happenings, you'll go about the optimistic point of view and start to kind of tackle it in that way that you did, which I think is extraordinary, Catherine. I have
Well,
to say,
and I credit all of my teachers leading up to that because one of the things Patanjali talks about in the Yoga Sutra is creating this, it's almost like doing this interior decorating on your mind body in a way. It's like cleansing, purifying. All right, how do you change the environment of the mind? Almost like how do you change to different levels of consciousness? Well,
mm,
replace your thoughts. He goes through this step by step. So I had already undergone a period of this like almost purification, basic baby steps before being dealt this hard thing. Had I not gone through that, I don't know how I would have dealt with it. Uh, but it was pretty amazing setup, I will say. And I remember all my friends looked at me during that time and I was still teaching. They were like, how?
yeah.
How? It's almost like you were just kind of brought along. You just went with life's flow. I just went with life's flow. I never planned on it. Very few people wake up and say, okay, I'm going to be a poet yogi. It's
Um,
much more likely to be a doctor or a lawyer or something sensible. So I feel like, yeah, it just kind of strung along and thank goodness for it, because it helped me then get to this new place where so I'm not so stuck in the grief. Yeah, of course I have it, but it's not doesn't keep me down for very long. It's kind of like you pop in, you pop out because I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with teachers who have helped me see that there's more. And help me and help prepare the soil, that the soil was prepared. It was fertile, it was tilled, it was well nitrogenized, had the right elements, the right combination of chemicals, and water. And then a few seeds were planted and it's like, okay. So I want
no,
to
I know.
tell you this.
Now I know my grandfather's channeling into you. He was an amazing gardener. And the one thing he'll always talk to me about is sowing seeds. I said to Annie, if he gives me
Oh
another
no,
seed
stop
story,
it.
I'm really done. But here you are. You've got the
Here's the
story.
story. It's right here. Oh my gosh. And then you're open to all this, and then life is, it's still hard, but it's less so because it's not just that, you know, there's more. I want to tell you this one, like quick little, I have a million side stories, but this one, and I think it'll make some of the moms laugh. Sometime after, of course, when Austin passed, I wasn't meditating then. I was too strung out, this like is almost like when a child is leaving, you almost have to like, you're laboring the death in a way. You're laboring so that they can leave, just as you labor so they can arrive. It's like a separation that's happening. The same way when they go to college, just a little bit more extended and a little deep. So when a few months later, when I was finally able to sit in meditation again, I would, get still and then
How
talk
long,
to Austin.
how long did it take you, Catherine, before you could sit and
It
meditate?
took me probably a month and a half. And then I
Wow.
was, kind of back to it. But, it wasn't always pretty, right? Some mornings it was, sit down and just cry. And then other mornings it was sit down and get still. And, it vacillated. It wasn't like this neat looking Instagram, like, oh, meditation. I got my mudra and I'm like totally zen. No, I mean, it was ugly. Ugly meditation. But this one morning I'm still and I talked to Austin. I don't always hear him, but I talk to him anyway, right? And I was joking with him because we always joked in real life. And I was like, I'm probably more of a nag to you now that you're in spirit than you were when you were here. And I'm just laughing. At an hour or two later, I was on my way to the yoga shala where I teach. And this car, I was on 95, and in Miami, drivers are terrible, notoriously so in Miami. We have a 6-lane wide highway. It's impossible driving. And this car came and cut me off. And I was just about to tell off the driver. And then I looked at the license plate. Can you believe what it said? 3 nag. Oh, I just burst out laughing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I know that all my team are there because one of my favorite stories, which I think I told last week with Suzanne, was that, you know, my friend would do that. I've driven in Miami, by the way. And,
Yeah.
in fact, I went to Miami with my friend, a true story. We landed and we were supposed to have this awful corporate car. And they said to us, I'm really sorry, we're right out of cars. You can have this convertible Cadillac. And we were like, "It's
Struggle.
fun." It's again, you know, a bit like Thelma and Louise like. And I was like, "You're giving us for the same price? We're not paying any overheads because you know our business." They'll be noting it. And they were like, "No, no, no, it's yours for the week." And we were like, "Wow." And then I was like, well, I hope you're driving it, Caroline. I hope it's not me. Because driving on the other side of the road in this kind of car is going to scare me because I just, you know,
Yeah.
but we managed it. But it is interesting, isn't it? Because you've got some highways that are really like open, fast paced,
Hmm.
and then others that you just sit in the traffic. You
Yeah,
sit.
yeah, yeah, completely.
And yeah, so it was a really interesting experience, but I think my friend drove a little bit more than me. But it's true, my friend did twice a car pulled out. Almost, I mean, it was really shocking, Catherine. It was the first one had his name on it, and
Mm,
he's
nice.
very unusual. He's got a very unusual nickname. And the second one on the same day had the nickname
Mm,
on it. And so I just was like, there's no mistaking. And I felt like a bit like you, the actual movement of the shock of the car moving out in front is almost designed to get your attention. You know,
yes,
my notice
100%.
another day driving, I can't tell you, I never used to notice the car license. Now I'm like glued to the car number plates in front of me. I get
Right.
quite a few messages from Spirit on the car number plates in front
That's
of
so
me
interesting.
or on the signs of the trucks or the passing
Hmm.
by. Amazing ones. I remember once reading for a lady up in the I was up in in London. We call them villages. It's not really villages. Areas of London. I was I was up at one of the high street and this car came by and it had the number plate Gianni. And I
Hmm.
thought, it stopped right in front of me. And I thought, that's going to be the name of the person that's coming in for the next reading. And when I sat down, I said, can I
Wild.
just, it's your husband in spirit. Is his name Gianni? And she went, it is. And I went, he sent me a sign.
Oh,
And
it's
I've seen that a
wild. It's
number of times.
wild.
It is wild. It is wild. But I think the spirit world want you to do well. They want
Mm,
to heal their loved one. They want to help. And so if it's an unusual name, and Gianni to me would be an unusual name because it's a different language, it
mhm.
would be a way of getting that into my mind and my physical awareness.
Yeah.
It shows you how closely the physical and the disincarnate and the incarnate is connected because they're clearly. So I had it once in a demonstration where somebody actually gave me a reading. I was sat next to 3 Indians. Again, the Indian theme there.
Again.
Indians. And she said to me, you know, 3 people that are in India at the moment. And I thought, she's just looking at 3 people next to me. And I thought, what is going on? And she was clueless. She was clueless. She's so concentrated on spirit. And she gave me this beautiful reading. And it was about my 3 friends that were in India, one that had a
Oh,
farm, was on a yoga retreat, and the other one that was living there at the moment. She didn't permanently live there. She'd only just begun living there for a period of
oh,
time. And so I thought it was really beautiful. And I realized after that, sometimes when there's an important message to be had,
mhm.
they will help you and they'll set it up before. And that's incredible. Now I try to take photographs. I can't always get photographs of
Yeah,
it. I like to have evidence and say, I did. I definitely saw it.
right, I saw it, it happened. Or my favorite is when someone's with me and then it happens, and they're like, "Oh my
Yeah.
goodness." Again,
I had a really
yeah,
good
it's
one the other day. I said to somebody, I have no idea why this is going to happen to you because I know that you've got no one in your family called Bert.
yeah,
Because Spirit tell me you haven't. But tomorrow you can have a number plate that's going to say Bert. It's going to be right in front of you, and you will send
mhm,
it to me. And they did. And so I was like, you can't make it up. You can't make it up, can you?
No, not if you tried. You either you notice it or you don't, but you can't fabricate it. It's just it's happening and it's happening all the time. And if you can
Yeah,
train your eye to catch it,
yeah, and
you
I
know.
wondered to myself, was there an insecurity with that person where spirit wanted to show them that
Yeah.
evidentially the information was in real time, but it was also they had an awareness of past, present, and future? Because they say, don't they, that time
Mhm.
doesn't exist in the
Yeah.
same way. It's not as linear as it is here, and therefore they've got awareness of our whole life
Mhm.
experience already. And so I just yeah, these things are amazing, Catherine. They're amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that you've managed to bring more light into your life, even though you've got sorrow, and that you're able to combine the two and that light is able to lift you. I think that is just so powerful. I'm sure your book's going to help many, many people.
Oh,
So, where do
thank
they
you,
find you
Kat.
to read it? Where do they get it? Because I think the other thing about poems, Catherine, that's really
Mm.
lovely is when you're in deep grief or in grief in general, if you're having a bad day, it's very hard to read a book. Like, a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
can't put it down or they reread the same thing 5 times. Like, concentration isn't where it used to be for a short period of time, and some people have, brain fog and or grief fog, as I call it, and
Mhm.
it goes and sometimes it stays. With a poem, you've got a nice short piece of
Yeah.
information that can stop a panic attack, it can stop that it can give you something to concentrate or think about or even meditate on.
Yeah, it's like a little chocolate. You know, you can just take it out one little piece at a time. And it's interesting you say that about not being able to read when you're in deep grief, as I wasn't able to write for a long time between the time Austin was diagnosed to the time he transitioned. I think I wrote two pieces that just fell out of me. You know, it's almost like a creative constipation. I had a moment to myself and something fell out because it was difficult to concentrate. And also I didn't want to see what was happening. I couldn't confront it that directly. So the poems are written before and mostly after he transitioned. But I do hope that it helps people when they're ready to read it. And the unfortunate thing about grief is you have the rest of your life to work on it, right? Someone's like, "Oh, I can't come to a support meeting." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Like you literally have for as long as you're in a body to heal and to work on this." So the book is there for anyone whenever they want to tap into it, and it's available wherever you can buy books. I don't know about in the UK, but Amazon, bookshop.org at your local bookshop.
And Amazon, yeah, absolutely. So they can get it on
Yeah.
Amazon. Amazing,
Yeah,
fantastic.
you
Well,
can get it, which just makes it easier, or right from the Gunpowder Press. That's the press that was brave enough to put out the book because it's a doozy, it's a tough story, and it also has a few mystical experiences in there. So, hold on to your hats, right?
I love that, Catherine. I love that. I love your sense of humor as well. I love joy that you bring, and I love the energy that you bring to the table. I think it's really beautiful, and I've enjoyed working with you and spending time with you, and I'm very excited about seeing you in the physical very soon.
For your teachings. I mean, you've been just such a guide for me and one of my earth teachers, and one of my Western teachers. So I'm very grateful for you and that we share a background in yoga.
Yeah,
Is Yeah, really
absolutely.
no surprise, is it?
It really isn't, it makes me tingle actually and get tingling all over my head. The energy is just going crazy around my head at the moment. I can feel them tingling, they clearly want me to say something else, but I just wanna say I'm really proud of you. I can't wait to meet you in the physical. I get attached to so many
Too.
stories and people, but some people resonate and you just know that they're your people and that you're excited, and I
Mhm.
know that things that we're gonna do on that retreat are shared interests as well. They're things that we are both passionate about sound, we're both passionate
Mhm.
about and poetry and creativity, and all these things are gonna come combined. So I can't wait to hug you. That I'm gonna look
Me too,
forward,
Kat.
and we might be short of the physical hugs from Austin, so we'll have to do them ourselves and get him to trance in so that we can have a tea,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
that'll be a really, really good thing. So thank you so much for
he'll be
coming on.
there. Thank you so
And you
much for having me.
I knew elements of your story, but I didn't know the whole story, and so, and I only
Yeah.
hear it from Austin's perspective as well, so it's beautiful, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Kat. So
Thank
much
you,
love
good luck.
to you.
Take
See
care.
you soon.
See you soon. Bye.